scale teams without breaking the rules. My name is Gabby. I'm a business analyst and host of this great podcast that we love so much. And I have Edgar here with us as always. Edgar Martinez is our moderator and he's the director of digital transformation here at Cogent. And we have two great speakers, Tanya and Robert. They'll have a chance to introduce themselves in a bit, but welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Together, we will explore
Thank you for having us.
Has gone from being seen as a blocker to becoming a powerful and enabler for growth. So let's just dive right in. Edgar, over to you.
Thank you, Gabby. Yeah, so as you were saying, right, compliance means basically following the rules, whether that's legal, ethical, or industry specific when we are doing business. And I bet that specifically, and I think that's what is making it very interesting today. Specifically, we are talking about processing calls, right? And also, everything that has to do with AI. All of these topics are like super hot right now, and really looking forward to learning more about how we can actually see compliance not as a blocker, but rather as a way to move forward with some good amount of order and be successful. So again, thank you, Tanya and Robert, for joining us. And over to you, Tanya, if you want to start, please tell us a bit more about yourself. Then we will go with Robert, and then we will get started from there.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having us. This is a really, really important topic to us. And I'm the CEO and co-founder of PreCallAI. And we're actually right here in the Detroit area. And we've got Robert, who's in San Diego, and then my partner is in India. So we're an international and local organization. We love compliance. We've built everything into our system from the beginning with compliance in mind, because it's better to have a strong foundation and start with that in mind, and then you don't have to go back and rebuild anything. So yeah. And Robert, I'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Gabriella, Edgar, for having us. It's fun to be here with you, and having the opportunity to discuss this important topic is really a great thing for us. So thank you. I'm Robert Coucher. I'm the CRO of PreCallAI. I joined Tanya and partner in late 2024, and we've been working very hard to bring our product set to the market. One of the things that I learned very early on is that A, compliance isn't optional, and B, a whole lot of people out there don't understand that. And so part of what we're trying to do is educate as well as take product to market. There are a lot of people who play in the same space we do, and it's very much a hodgepodge of compliance or non-compliance. And so it's interesting to see how it's evolving, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about that with you.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, so definitely my first question, since you, Robert, were talking about educating people, right? And in the end, sharing what you know would be, what do you think, guys? It's like a common myth about compliance, specifically, well, we are talking about sales, for example, or AI in particular. What do you see in companies, and what's like this common myth that they might be having about compliance?
Edgar, it's more than a myth. It's a lack of awareness. I mean, I'm personally not aware of a lot of mythology, like you can do this, but you can't do that. That's inaccurate. It's mostly either companies or individuals are aware of it and have educated themselves and built compliance into their systems and solutions, or else they're blissfully ignorant about it. And the penalties are now so onerous that the latter category is very dangerous, both for the companies who have not built compliance into their or compliance readiness into their systems, as well as their clients who can face gigantic, and by gigantic, I mean millions and millions, or large percentages of their net for violations. So mythology, China, if you can think of myths, great. For me, it's just either you kind of get it and you're trying really hard to keep up with the changing landscape, or else you're just blissfully driving toward a cliff and it's a nice sunny day till you go over.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Robert. And you can either think about it as necessary or think about it as you hope you don't get caught. So we really advise clients clients to make sure they're doing it the right way. And just to be clear, for some listeners who might not know, it's either AI phone calls or a text. So SMS text also applies when it comes to needing permission. And I think a lot of, for instance, the marketing companies might take more of a shotgun approach and think they're going to use it for outbound and prospecting, but that's just really not a good idea. So one of the things that we try to do when we first talk to prospects and new clients is we'll work with them to set up a compliant sales funnel. And what that means is that before you call them or text them, you're gaining their written permission. And, it's different from country to country. It's different from state to state. But in essence, you need to have their written permission before you use any kind of a voice AI call or an SMS text. So there are lots of people who, I agree with Robert, are maybe blissfully unaware of this. But I don't know, Robert, maybe you might want to share some of the recent stories.
And to that point, whenever you say compliance, it's a big word, but compliant with what is kind of the first question that comes to mind. And so in the United States, we have what's called TCPA, Telephone Consumer Protection Act. And that covers a whole lot of things about what you can and cannot do with voice, with robots, with auto dialing and that sort of thing. Then in Europe, there's a thing they call GDPR, and that's a General Data Protection Act or regulations. And that covers much the same stuff. And then there are other things layered on top of that. There's HIPAA in the medical industry. There's a slew of FCC and SEC regulations. So if you're dealing with anybody who's in the financial businesses, you better be really tuned into SEC as well as FCC. And so, and that's just a handful. There are quite a few other regulatory regimes that need to be paid attention to. But I'll give you one example, and I'm not going to name names, that would be rude, but I was browsing LinkedIn recently and I came across a post by a company who's in the voice AI business. And this particular company was boasting about how they had enabled hundreds of customers or maybe thousands of customers to make tens of thousands of outbound calls to prospects, resulting in a significant number of meetings getting set. What didn't appear in that particular post was anything about consent. And I almost picked up the phone and called the guy who posted, because every single one of those calls could carry a substantial fine. And by substantial, I mean, it could be into the thousands of dollars per call. So if you're enabling your customers to make essentially illegal phone calls, not only are your customers liable for every single call they make, you carry some what do you call it, ancillary responsibility for that, because you didn't notify them in your process of selling and enabling them that they cannot make calls without explicit written consent to receive calls. And then even then, you are limited in when you can call and the content of the call and that sort of thing. So there are a lot of folks out there who just don't understand the risk. And, looking at it from the consumer side, I don't know anybody who says, I really don't mind getting a call at 2 a.m. about a new TV clicker. Of course, nobody wants that. And so, it's not just a legal framework, it's common sense and ethics. And you layer in all of the different regimes. And if you're a company in the same business that we are, and you're not specifically, explicitly all day, every day thinking about, is everything we're doing compliant with all these regimes in the Middle East, in Europe, in South America, in the United States, and Canada, you could be in for a very rude awakening.
Agree. And there's one more, since you had mentioned ethics, point that I'd like to make there, Robert. When I first started about a year ago in this arena, I had to turn down a really large deal because they wanted to pretend that the AI was a human. So I had to say no, and that was one of the first lessons that I learned. And it's critical. So, and it's an ethical issue. It's bad business to misrepresent yourself and your company. But so I recommend that it's identified as an AI assistant. And also, let's make it sound as human as possible. Let's make it comfortable to talk to, so we get that it needs to sound human. And wow, the ones that we just made yesterday, it's really hard to tell if it's a human or not. So I always recommend that they identify it's an AI assistant, in some way. And they should just, even if it wasn't a compliance matter, it's a good business practice. And
I'll take that a step further, Tanya.
Okay.
We will not do business with anyone who says that it's their intention to misrepresent the agents that we're providing. That's our reputation that's involved in the way they do business. And so, we'll politely decline, and there are other places they can go. But, leading with deception is not a great sales tactic, but it's also not an appropriate thing to do in a business. And we just won't participate in that kind of deception.
Yeah, agree. We want to make it to, the top 3 in our space, and longevity and, things like, legal matters are definitely important when you think about, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now. But I think what's happened in this space is a lot of the people who have started these types of companies aren't necessarily sales or operations minded. They're more on the tech side. And, we're lucky because my partner is tech minded and also very business minded, but that's not always the case. A lot of these companies will, not really understand what is a sales process, what is a sales workflow. If you're automating a sales process, there's automation involved, and the process needs to be solid to begin with. So there's all kinds of things to consider with that. But I think what happens is the tech guys who start out get so excited about what they're doing and the capabilities of their platform that they maybe really legitimately aren't even thinking about it. But we want to start with this, like I said, a solid foundation, and everything that we're building, it's built into from the very beginning, so that it's good to go. If we have a HIPAA compliance client, we're good for them. If we have somebody who needs SEC, the platform is ready to work for them. So, it's really because we're thinking about longevity in general.
Yeah, if I can add on to that, Tanya, so far we've touched on the concept of deception in AI voice, but we've also touched briefly on consent. But there's other stuff about how you handle information, what information you can record, how it's transmitted, how it's stored, how it's secured, how a customer or a person who receives an SMS or a phone call needs to have the ability to object and have any information that was transmitted or recorded deleted within 30 days in Europe, for example, and similarly in the US. So, it's not just when can you call, what hours can you make robocalls, whatever you want to call it. It's also your voice is under law in the US and Europe, especially, considered data. And data has a whole lot of very specific laws about how it has to be protected, how it has to be stored, how it has to be replicable, how it has to be available for examination within a certain period of time, and it has to be deletable, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not as simple as, can we call people after 9 o'clock at night to sell them insurance? It's, what do we do about the entire chain of custody of that data from the time we're speaking with someone on a robocall or a voice AI call to the point where there's a court case and they say, we need to see your records and you need to bring everything involving this client to the courtroom and explain how you protected it, where it was stored, how you processed it. Did you anonymize it? If you didn't anonymize it, do you realize that you've just sent whomever you transmitted information to a whole bunch of personally protected information, PPI, that you have no right to do that? So the compliance is not a non-trivial thing. It's actually a complex system of regimes. And to make it worse, it's changing almost daily. For example, Texas just produced what's called a mini TCPA. And they're the first state in the US to produce this specific protection, but it applies all the same protection to SMS transmissions as other TCPA regulations cover for voice. So, and you can expect to see that rolling out across the country. California has a very strict regime under what they call the CCPA, which is similar to the TCPA, but it has a whole bunch of California regulations and restrictions layered on top of that. Colorado, the same thing. And there are a number of states in New England that are either already enacting their own regulatory regimes or in the process of legislating them now. So it's not something that you read about once and call it a day. It's something I do every day. I get up and the first thing I do is check what's happening in the world of compliance and governance, because it could be significant.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Yep.
So we only have 10 more minutes and I would like to
Wow.
ask, I know.
We can do an hour another time.
Yeah, for sure. I want to start thinking about the future. So if we are sitting here 2 years from now, how do you think compliance in sales would look different? What's the next frontier?
You first, Robert.
Well, number one, there will be a lot of case law that doesn't exist today. There are a number of big lawsuits going on that are going to be attention getters. So I think that those companies who are playing in this space, who are not presently engaged in active compliance, that's going to be a washout. That they will either change what they do, get sued out of business, or get compliant fast. So I think that's one thing that will change. I think another thing that will change is the perception of AI voice assistance. Right now, it is typically associated with the robocall that you get that wants to sell you something. And the way it's going to be different is you're not just going to get a recording that says, can we have somebody call you back? It's going to be a highly interactive conversation between the recipient and the caller. And as a result of that, there's going to be much more data that's exchanged. And so there's going to be a lot of work between now and then to make sure that the availability of all the mechanisms that are required for that volume of data comes into place. And right now, it's available on a lesser scale, but I think over the next few years, we're going to see that the regulatory regimes are going to demand a huge amount of storage, retrieval, deletion technology that it kind of exists today, but it's not elegant. And so we'll see some changes there too.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say, Robert, that a lot of companies are not keeping the proper records, especially for the opt-out files.
Yeah.
And yeah, another thing I see is a huge need for some kind of services or maybe counseling for companies to help them with this, because it seems really overwhelming because of how quickly it's changing. And, you know, I think there's a real need, a real value and a real need for that for a lot of companies right now. But I think that will increase. I agree with what you said about the other things. And I also think that each state is going to continue to try to do their own thing as much as possible. So I'm really curious how that will shake out. Did the Texas one just happen today? Or was
It
that
just
yesterday?
passed and was signed by Governor Abbott, and either that or it's on his desk right now, but it's expected to become law September 1st.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, and what I would recommend is for companies who don't have a person on staff, like who don't have a Robert to do this for them, you know, I would definitely find a person to follow, or, you know, hey, create your own agent to do that for you. But I mean, just staying up to date on what's happening and everything that you build in compliance, make it compliance minded when you build it. And I think people are hopefully going to start keeping that in mind. And yeah, if they see huge fines and lawsuits coming out, that might catch some more attention.
I think one other point I'll add is AI governance in general. You know, we're talking right now today about compliance in the voice AI space, but AI is a lot of different things and it's used in a lot of different ways. And so all corporations, if they aren't already doing it, need to be putting in place governance bodies. They need to actively make sure they know where AI is being used within their corporation. If they're training models for anything ranging from hiring to pay scales, whatever, the data that goes into training those models has to be handled, you know, such and so. And there are tons of things that don't even relate directly to AI in voice technology, but which all corporations are going to have to get on board with. And you're going to see, you're not only going to have, you know, a CIO, CEO, CFO, whatever. A lot of companies are now getting CAIOs in order to oversee governance and use of AI across the board within their companies.
Because we need another C acronym, don't we?
So
but yeah, it's true.
yeah, Kiran told us on the comments, thank you, Kiran, for participating. In future, it will become mandatory to say who is speaking, AI or human.
Yeah, we consider it mandatory now, but
Okay.
I mean, technically, I guess it's not, but I would always recommend it.
Especially with deep fake technology. You know, speaking of LinkedIn, I have a person who I worked with years ago and follow today, and he's a very senior technologist, and he did a whole video on LinkedIn. And then at the very end, he popped out and said, "Hey, that was all deep fake of me, myself. This is the real me. By the way, if you can tell the difference, you're way ahead of everybody else because I can't tell the difference." And so, you know, there's so much going on, and you know, the stakes are so high that governance and compliance are their king. And if you're not there, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and so far the biggest fines have been a deep fake of Joe Biden got the biggest fine so far. Is that still true, Robert?
I
That's like
can't speak to that.
23,000 was the last one. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I mean, why risk it? is the point.
All right, guys. So we are almost like about to wrap it up, but I do want to ask the final question. On a personal level, what's one compliance principle or lesson that you apply not just at work, but on your everyday life?
I'll go first. Be honest. I mean, at the end of the day, compliance really isn't much more complicated than be ethical and be honest. And if you use those as your personal playbook, they translate very neatly into the specifics of the laws and regulations and rules that are emerging. A lot of it's common sense if you understand the technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't try to fool people. It's disrespectful. You know, who wants to start a business relationship like that? And there are some of us out here who, you know, may be called geeks, but I would actually rather talk to an AI assistant than be transferred 5 times in 5 different countries. That's just me, because then I can get my actual task done immediately, you know? So I think people will become more accepting of it the more they use it and realize that it's not just a glorified, you know, voicemail or phone transfer system. It's actually useful. So.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Robert and Tanya. Edgar, you've been super quiet today. Do you have any closing comments?
I was just listening to all the points, and I believe it's fundamental, right? That people who are not taking this into account, compliance, can start looking into it, because if not, there are consequences. And I think Tanya and Robert explained it very clearly today, and also gave us some tips on how to act on this. So thank you so much, guys. It's been great conversation. I really enjoyed what I was hearing. And hopefully we will get a chance to you know, complement that conversation and keep talking about it, because for sure it's very relevant in today's
There will
landscape.
be more new stuff to talk about next time, I guarantee it.
Yeah, for
Amazing.
sure. It's daily. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We'll definitely keep in touch, Tanya. You're more than welcome to attend one of our in-person events in Detroit. Robert, you too, if you ever.
Oh, I'm planning on
it. There. Sorry?
I'm planning on it.
Yeah, definitely. I'll share all the details to you after this session. Thanks again. We'll keep in touch. You're invited to another session soon with the same topic, with a different topic. I know you guys have a lot to talk about on the AI area, so we're more than happy to have you back. Thanks to everyone that joined us today. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. And yeah, have a good one, everyone. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Tanya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.